Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
Today we are going to dismantle the camera.
Okay, I have to stop you right there, because when I read the prep material for this deep dive, that was the first thing that jumped out at me, dismantling the camera. And I literally looked at the lens of the camera currently recording us, and I thought, are we talking about technology or, surveillance?
We're talking about something much closer to home. We're talking about you and the listener and me. We are talking about the single most pervasive and powerful myth about how human beings actually exist in the world.
And the source for this deep dive is a book that really challenges that myth head on.
It does. We're diving into Perception, How Our Bodies Shape Our Minds by Dennis Proffitt and Drake Baer.
Proffitt is the psychologist, right? He's the academic heavyweight in this.
Yes, from the University of Virginia. He spent, I think, about 40 years studying how we see. And Drake Baer is the science writer who helps translate that, well, that massive archive of research into something we can actually read without a PhD in visual science.
So let's circle back to the camera, because I feel like most people, and I'd include myself in this, have a pretty standard model of how our eyes work. I mean,
Right.
It's simple, right? I open my eyelids, that's the shutter, light comes in,
Right.
it hits the retina. My optic nerve sends that picture, that data to my brain. And my brain is the computer. It processes the JPEG file, and it tells me, okay, there's a coffee cup on the table.
Exactly. That is the standard model. It's intuitive. It feels completely true. It's what we're all taught, more or less.
And you're telling me it's not true.
It is fundamentally, biologically, and for our purposes, structurally false.
Okay. That's a pretty big claim. Because if I'm not a camera, what on earth am I?
You're an organism. And that single distinction changes absolutely everything. You see, a camera, it records the Umgebung.
Boom. German term.
Yes, it's a German term Proffitt uses. It means the objective surroundings, the world of physics, the geometric reality. If a camera takes a picture of a hill, it records the geometry. It measures a 10-degree slope. It doesn't care if it's raining. It doesn't care if the camera's battery is low. The hill is just the hill.
Right. The hill is an objective fact out there in the world.
But you do not see the Umgebung. You see the Umwelt.
Okay. Umwelt.
Yeah.
Another German word. I'm sensing a theme here.
It's a crucial one. It comes from a biologist named Jakob van Uxküll, way back in the early 20th century. It translates roughly to self-centered world, or maybe more accurately, environment for the organism.
Environment for the organism.
Yeah.
So you're saying my world is fundamentally different from, say, a dog's world, even if we're in the same room.
Completely and utterly different. Uxküll used the example of a tick. You know, the little parasite?
Yes. Gross, but go on.
So imagine a tick, a dog, and you're all standing in the same field. Physically, you're in the same Umgebung. The same atoms are there for everyone, but the tick is blind and deaf. It couldn't care less about the sunset or the color of the grass or the sound of the birds.
So what does it care about?
Its entire perceptual system, its entire reality is tuned to exactly one thing: the smell of butyric acid.
Which is found in the sweat of mammals.
Exactly. The tick's user interface, its Umwelt, is just a binary question. Is there butyric acid? Yes or no? If yes, drop and bite. If no, wait. That is its entire world, a world of smell.
Okay, so the tick is living in this kind of smell-based tunnel vision. The dog, meanwhile, is probably smelling the entire history of every other dog that's walked through that field in the last week.
And the human. We think we're seeing the real field, the objective one. But Proffitt's argument is that we are just as constrained as the pick. We aren't seeing the pure geometry of the world. We are seeing a user interface that evolution has designed to answer one very specific and very urgent question.
And that question is,
how much energy will this action cost me?
wait a second, you're saying my vision, my actual eyesight, is constantly worried about calories. It's like a built-in accountant.
That is the core thesis of the book. Perception is not about accuracy. It's about bioenergetic regulation. It is a system designed from the ground up to keep you alive by managing your body's energy budget.
So, just to be clear for everyone listening, we are not doing brain hacks today. This isn't about how to visualize success or anything like that.
No, absolutely not. We are doing a structural analysis of the human operating system. And to do that, we have to look at the system design, the incentives that drive it, and the outcomes that follow from that design.
And the design of the system, it starts with a separation, a split in how we see that. I have to admit, it really blew my mind when I first read about it.
You're talking about the separation between knowing and doing.
Exactly. I just assume vision is one thing, I see.
Yeah.
But that's not right, is it?
No, Anatomically, you have two distinct visual systems, two completely different streams of information processing in the brain.
This is the two streams hypothesis.
That's the one. First, you have the ventral stream. This pathway travels down to the temporal lobe. This is vision for identification. It's conscious. It's the part of you that looks at a shape on a table and says, that is a hammer. It gives you the what.
Okay, that's what I normally think of as seeing. That's the camera part.
That's what we all think of as seeing. But then there's the dorsal stream. It goes up to the parietal lobe. This is vision for action. It's largely unconscious. It's the zombie in your brain that is constantly calculating the world in terms of motor commands. It calculates the exact aperture your fingers need to be to pick up that hammer, the weight distribution, the arc of the swing.
And these two systems, they don't really talk to each other, or not in the way we think.
They do communicate, but they can function with a startling degree of independence. And the proof of this, the case study that really anchors the entire book, is a woman known in the literature as Dee Fletcher.
Tell me about Dee. What happened to her?
Dee suffered a terrible accident. It was carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater, and it caused very specific localized brain damage to her ventral stream, the system. The outcome was a condition called visual agnosia.
So she was blind.
No, and that is the absolutely fascinating part. She wasn't blind. Her eyes worked perfectly. Her retinas were fine. Her optic nerve was sending signals. But if you held up a pencil in front of her and asked, Dee, what is this? She couldn't tell you.
She couldn't recognize a pencil.
She couldn't describe the shape. She couldn't tell you if it was vertical or horizontal. To her conscious mind, to her knowing system, it was just unidentifiable visual noise. You couldn't see the object as an object.
Okay, that's bizarre. But where does the other system come in?
Right. So this is where the system design point really lands.
Right.
The researcher would hold up the pencil and instead of asking what it was, would just say, Dee, take the pencil.
Yeah.
Her hand would reach out, rotate to the perfect angle, and grasp it flawlessly every single time.
Wait, hang on. She doesn't know what it is. She can't tell you if it's sideways or upright, but she can just pick it up.
With perfect motor execution. They even tried it with a mailbox slot. They'd hold a piece of wood with a slot cut in it and rotate the slot to all different angles. Dee couldn't tell them the angle. She couldn't describe it at all. But if they handed her an envelope and said, mail this, she would orient her hand perfectly to slide it into the slot, no matter the angle.
That is just wild. It's like her hand knew something her conscious mind didn't.
Exactly. Her house system, the dorsal stream, vision for action, was completely intact. It was still reading the environment for affordances, for action possibilities. It just couldn't report back to the conscious mind for description.
So this proves that the evolutionary function of our visual system isn't to, write a poem about the sunset. It's to interact with the world, to do things.
Vision is for doing. That's the mantra of the whole book. We aren't walking encyclopedias, we are walking actors. And this idea isn't new. It leads us directly to the ecological approach to perception, which was pioneered by a psychologist named James J. Gibson.
Gibson. He's the guy who hated the camera metaphor even way back in the 60s and 70s.
He despised it. He thought it was poisoning the entire field. See, before Gibson, everyone pretty much thought like Hermann von Helmholtz. This was the idea of unconscious inference.
Unconscious inference, what does that mean?
It's the idea that the eye gives us a flat, distorted, crappy 2D image, and the brain has to act like a super smart detective. It has to take these poor clues and do all this complex trigonometry and geometry to guess how far away things are, what shape they are.
To build a 3D model in our heads.
Precisely. Gibson came along and said, that's nonsense. It's too slow, too complicated. The information is already there in the light.
But you have to move to get it. That's the key, right?
That is the absolute key. He called it optical flow. Imagine you're driving a car down a road. You don't need a ruler or a calculator to know how fast you're going. You just look at the world moving past you. The pebbles right near your tires are blurring past at 100 miles an hour. The trees a little farther out are moving more slowly. The mountains in the far distance are barely moving at all.
Right, that flow, that gradient of speed, it tells you everything.
That flow is the math. Your brain doesn't need to calculate anything. It just perceives the flow directly. If the flow stops, you've stopped. If the flow expands from a central point, you're moving forward. It's incredibly elegant. But here is the catch, and this is where we really get into the incentives of the system.
Okay, incentives. Because every system has an economy, a set of rules it operates by.
And the human body has a very, very strict economy. It's all about energy. Your brain is an absolute hog. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it consistently burns 20% of your daily metabolic energy.
That is a ridiculously expensive piece of hardware to run.
It is. So evolution's prime directive is to cut costs wherever possible, to be efficient. And this means the perceptual system is incentivized to, well, to lie to you.
To lie. It's not trying to be accurate.
It will happily sacrifice geometric accuracy for what Proffitt calls adaptive utility. If you see the world exactly as it is, a geometrically perfect representation that doesn't necessarily help you survive, it might even be a waste of processing power. But you see the world in terms of costs and benefits, that directly helps you regulate your behavior to stay alive.
So the system isn't trying to be right, it's trying to be useful.
Exactly. And this brings us to what are probably the most famous set of experiments in this entire field, the Hill slant studies. This is where the rubber really meets the road, or I guess where the feet meet the incline.
I love these studies because they're so intuitive and relatable. We've all stood at the bottom of a hill and thought, oh man, that looks impossible.
So the setup is beautifully simple. Proffitt and his colleagues, researchers like Mukul Bala, take participants to the bottom of a grassy hill on the campus of the University of Virginia. And they ask them a simple question. How steep is this hill?
Now, if I'm a camera, I should just say it's 10 degrees or whatever the actual angle is.
Right. But it turns out humans are notoriously bad at guessing angles verbally. If I show you a 5-degree hill, which is a very gentle, walkable slope, most people will guess it's something like 20 degrees.
A 20-degree slope, that's a serious climb.
It's a huge overestimation. But Proffitt wasn't just interested in the fact that we overestimate. He was interested in who overestimates more and why. So in one of the early variations, they recruited runners.
People who are generally fit.
Yes. But they divided them into two groups. Group A had just finished a long, grueling run. They were depleted, sweaty, tired, low blood sugar, the works. Group B was fresh, they were stretched, and they were just about to start their run.
So you've got the same type of person looking at the same hill. The only variable is fatigue. The only variable is the current state of the body's energy reserves.
Precisely. And the result was staggering. The tired runners saw the hill as significantly steeper than the fresh runners did. Their overestimation went up by as much as 45%.
Visually steeper. Or did they just, say a higher number because they felt tired?
Yeah.
Like, that looks hard, so I'll say 30 degrees instead of 20.
That is the crucial distinction, and it's what all the skeptics immediately jumped on. They said, oh, they're just complaining. They know they're tired, so they're consciously or unconsciously picking a higher number. This is called a compliance demand in psychology.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. The participant is trying to give the researcher the answer they think is expected.
So Proffitt, being a good scientist, had to find a way to bypass the conscious mind entirely. He developed a non-visual, non-verbal measure, a haptic measure, he called it. Basically, it's a palm board. Imagine a flat board on a pivot that you can tilt with your hand. The participant doesn't look at the board at all. They keep their eyes on the hill, and with their hand, they just tilt the board until its angle feels like it matches the slope of the hill they're looking at.
Ah, so it's a motor task, not a verbal one. It's tapping into the doing system.
It's tapping directly into the dorsal stream. And guess what? When you use the hand to measure, the estimates are almost perfectly accurate. The hand knows the hill is 5 degrees. The dorsal stream, the action system, knows the geometric truth.
But the ventral stream, the conscious knowing part of my brain, is seeing a mountain.
That's it. So my hand knows the truth, but my eyes are seeing a useful lie. Hallucination is maybe too strong a word, but
yeah.
Yes, your visual system is projecting a giant stop sign onto the world. It's taking the real geometry of the hill and overlaying a penalty tax based on your current level of fatigue. It's deliberately making the hill look steeper to discourage you from even trying to climb it.
It's preconscious behavioral regulation. The system is saying, hey, buddy, you're low on gas. Don't even think about driving up that mountain. It happens before you even make a choice.
Exactly. And to prove it wasn't just about the subjective feeling of being tired, they did the famous backpack study. They took a group of healthy college students and strapped a heavy backpack on them, roughly 20% of their body weight.
Like carrying a big bag of groceries or toddler.
Right. And immediately, without them taking a single step, the hills looked steeper. The distances to landmarks looked farther away. Just the potential cost, the pressure of the weight on their shoulders was enough to recalibrate their entire visual horizon.
The body is the measuring stick.
That is the quote from the book that sums it all up. The body is the measuring stick. We don't measure the world in objective units like feet and meters. We measure it in bioenergetic units, in units of effort.
This reminds me of the sugar study. I feel like that one was the absolute smoking gun for the chemical metabolic side of this whole thing.
Oh, the sugar study is so elegant. It's designed to address the last few skeptics who might say, well, maybe wearing a heavy backpack just puts you in a bad mood and your mood affects your judgment.
Which is a fair point. Mood affects a lot of things.
It is. So for this study, they took high-performance cyclists. They had them do a strenuous workout on a stationary bike to deplete their energy. Then they gave them a drink. Half the group got a drink with glucose real sugar, the fuel of the brain and muscles.
Okay, the real stuff.
The other half got a drink that was sweetened with a non-caloric sweetener, like aspartame. Critically, it tasted exactly the same. The conscious mind, the tongue, could not tell the difference. There was no placebo effect from the sweet taste.
So your brain doesn't know what you drank, but your blood knows.
Your blood knows. Within minutes, the glucose hits the bloodstream. The visual system, which we now know has receptors that can directly monitor blood sugar levels, detects the incoming fuel. And what happens?
The hill flattens out.
For the sugar group, yes. The cyclists with the real sugar in their system perceived the hill as shallower and distances as shorter. The cyclists with the fake sugar saw it as just as steep as before.
That is just... It's profound.
It is. It means your eyes are literally checking your gas tank before they render the graphics of the world you're about to walk into.
It creates this totally different view of objectivity. Because if I'm hungry, if I've skipped lunch, the world I am inhabiting is physically different, perceptually different than the world I'm in after I've eaten a sandwich.
The Umgebung, the physics, is the same. The Umwelt, your actionable world, has completely shifted. And this isn't just about negative states. It happens in sports all the time. They call it the grapefruit effect.
Right. This comes from Mickey Mantle, the baseball player.
Yeah, the famous Yankees slugger. He said that when he was in a hot streak, when he was in a flow state, the baseball looked as big as a grapefruit coming towards the plate. It was huge. He felt like he couldn't miss it.
But when he was in a slump,
he said it looked like a tiny white speck, like a black-eyed pea. The geometry of the ball didn't change, but his body's ability to act on it did. When your motor system is fluent, when you are confident and capable, the perceptual system scales up the target. It's essentially saying, this is actionable, this is an easy target, go for it.
and when you're struggling, it scales it down. It says, this is hard. Maybe don't waste the energy swinging.
It's the same core mechanism, energy conservation and action guidance. And fear does the opposite. If you have a fear of heights and you look down from a balcony, the ground will look farther away to you than it does to someone who isn't afraid. Fear expands the vertical distance to discourage the potentially fatal action of falling.
Okay, so we have this incredibly robust biological system. It makes perfect evolutionary sense. Don't climb steep hills when you're starving. Don't jump off high balconies. It's a brilliant piece of engineering, really.
It's a masterpiece of adaptive engineering.
So why? Why on earth do we insist on the camera model? Why is our entire culture, from self-help to neuroscience, so obsessed with this idea that the mind is a piece of software and the body is just a meat taxi that drives it around?
Now we have to move up a level of analysis and look at the narrative and legitimization layer. We have to look at the stories our institutions tell themselves to legitimize this blindness. And we're really dealing with the long legacy of dualism.
René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Not I walk, therefore I am.
Descartes is the big one, yes. But the pattern goes deeper. We have a consistent habit, historically, of explaining the brain using whatever the most advanced and impressive technology of the era happens to be.
Oh, I love this timeline. It's fascinating.
It's actually hilarious when you look back at it. In the 1600s, the high-tech was hydraulics. The gardens of Versailles with all their water-powered moving statues and fountains. So Descartes said, aha, the brain is a hydraulic pump. It pushes animal spirits through the hollow tubes of the nerves to inflate the muscles.
Which sounds completely ridiculous to us now.
But then, a century later, the steam engine is invented. Thermodynamics, the physics of pressure and release. And suddenly, you have Freud talking about psychic energy and blowing off steam and repressed pressure building up in the psyche.
We still use that language. I need to vent. I'm under a lot of pressure.
Exactly. The metaphor is sticky. Then came the telegraph. And Helmholtz, the same guy from before, described the nerves as being like telegraph wires sending signals. And then finally, in the mid-20th century, we built the computer.
The CPU, the hard drive.
Yeah.
RAM, input-output.
And this became the dominant metaphor, maybe the most powerful metaphor in the history of science, the computational theory of mind. The brain is the hardware. The mind is the software. Perception is input. Action is output.
And it fits so neatly. It feels so clean and logical.
It's incredibly seductive because computers are logical, they're abstract, and most importantly for this discussion, they are disembodied. A computer program doesn't care if the physical computer is made of silicon chips or vacuum tubes or wood and string. The algorithm is the algorithm.
And a computer doesn't get tired. It doesn't get hungry.
That is the absolute key. A computer doesn't have a metabolic budget. It doesn't have to hunt for its electricity. It doesn't feel pain. By adopting this metaphor, we effectively stripped the wetness out of psychology. We decided to study the mind as if it were a piece of software floating in a jar, completely separate from the machine it runs on.
Which, when you put it like that, leads to some pretty obviously flawed science.
Flawed is an understatement. For 50 years, if you were a vision scientist and you wanted to study perception, what did you do? You brought a subject into a dark lab, you sat them in a chair, you clamped their head into a chin rest so they couldn't possibly move, and then you flashed lights and shapes at them on a screen.
You essentially paralyze them.
You systematically and deliberately removed the dorsal stream, the action stream, from the entire equation. And then you turned around and wrote thousands of papers saying vision is purely a process of identifying shapes. Well, of course it is. You prevented your subjects from doing anything else.
It's like studying a bird by nailing its wings to a table and then writing a paper concluding that birds are flightless animals.
That is the perfect analogy. And this institutional blindness, this neurocentrism, has real-world consequences. We now have neuroeconomics, neuromarketing, neurolaw. We're obsessed with fMRI scans. We're looking for the buy button in the brain, but we completely ignore the fact that the person pressing the button has a gut and hormones and might be holding a heavy shopping bag, which changes how they see the price tag.
We're staring at the CPU and completely ignoring the power supply.
And the chassis and the keyboard and the user holding the mouse, but the system, the real system, doesn't stop at the skin. And this is where the book gets into what they call the operational mechanisms. Specifically how we integrate tools into our sense of self.
Right, the extended body. This part was another mind bender for me.
So let's go back to the lab. Proffitt is testing distance perception again. He has a target on a table, and he asks people, how far away is that target? People make their usual verbal guess. Then he hands them a tool. It could be a simple conductor's baton or one of those reach extender grabber tools.
And just by holding the tool, the target looks closer.
Only if the tool can actually reach it.
Wait, really? So if I'm holding a stick that is long enough to touch the object, my eyes literally see the object as being closer to me?
Yes. The moment you become proficient with a tool, your brain remaps your body schema. It redraws the boundaries of you. It starts to treat the end of the stick as the end of your hand. So your internal measuring stick, your arm's reach, just got longer. And because your measuring stick is longer, the relative world scales down and becomes smaller, closer.
I feel this when I drive my car.
Go on.
When I'm parallel parking, I don't feel like I am a person inside a metal box. I feel like the car is me. I can feel exactly where the rear bumper is. I don't have to consciously calculate it. I just know. My sense of self extends to the edges of the vehicle.
That is exactly it. The car has become a temporary exoskeleton. Your perceptual boundary has expanded to the metal skin of the Honda. You are, for all practical purposes, a cyborg.
This actually gets into a really old philosophy debate that they bring up in the book. It was Aristotle versus a guy named Anaxagoras.
Right, the ancient chicken and egg problem of hands and intelligence. Anaxagoras, who was a pre-Socratic philosopher, said, humans are the smartest of all animals because we have hands.
Meaning that our ability to use tools to manipulate the world is what drove the evolution of our intelligence.
Correct. The physical act of manipulation created the need for a more complex brain to manage it. But Aristotle, being sort of the elitist philosopher that he was, said, no, you have it backward. We have hands because we're intelligent. He thought the abstract mind came first, and nature graciously gave us hands to serve the mind's will.
And for pretty much the next 2,000 years, Western thought sided with Aristotle. The mind is primary.
We did. But the modern science, from neuroscience to linguistics, strongly supports Anaxagoras. The very structures of our language, grammar, syntax, recursion, seem to map almost perfectly onto the motor structures required for complex tool use.
Tying a knot is the example they use.
Think about tying a complex knot, like a bowline. You have to take this strand, loop it under that one, hold this part tight with your left hand while you're moving that part with your right hand. It's an action of recursive embedding. You are literally putting one action inside another action.
Which is exactly how sentences work. The dog who was chasing the cat ran down the street.
Yeah.
The clause is embedded inside the main sentence.
Exactly. The logic of the hand became the logic of the sentence. The argument is that we literally thought our way into abstract speech by working with our hands.
So we have these external tools, like sticks and cars, that expand our sense of self outward. But we also have internal tools, right? Chemical tools.
Yeah.
Which brings us to interoception.
Interoception is, in a way, the sixth sense. We always talk about the five senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, which are all exteroceptive. They look out at the world, interoception looks in. It's the constant, massive data stream coming from your heart, your lungs, your gut, your kidneys.
This is the vagus nerve, right? The information superhighway from the body to the brain.
It's the superhighway. It's constantly sending updates to the brain. Heart rate is elevated, gut is tight, breathing is shallow, and the brain then interprets this raw physiological data as emotion.
So when we say I have a gut feeling, that's not just a metaphor.
It is bioenergetic data. And this internal data stream absolutely filters your vision, too. In one really poetic study, they had participants listen to music while they stood at the bottom of a hill.
Let me guess. Listening to some heavy metal made the hill look impossibly steep.
Close. They played Mahler. Specifically, the very slow, incredibly sad Adagietto from his Fifth Symphony. It is heartbreaking, heavy, mournful music.
In the hill.
The hill looks significantly steeper to the people listening to the sad music.
Just because the music made them feel sad?
Because sadness is not just a feeling, it's a specific physiological state. Sadness is a stop signal. It's a withdrawal state. It lowers your arousal, slows your metabolism. It's a signal to the body that says, we are in a state of loss or mourning. We need to conserve resources. Do not engage with costly endeavors.
So the hill becomes a much more significant obstacle.
Precisely. But when they played upbeat, joyful Mozart, the hill flattened out. Happiness is a go signal. It signals a state of high resources and fluency.
This connects directly to that idea of the body keeps the score.
It absolutely does. Trauma, depression, chronic anxiety, these aren't just software glitches in the abstract mind. They are persistent physiological tunings. A person suffering from clinical depression is literally living in a world that is physically harder to navigate. The stairs in their apartment building are steeper. The walk to the grocery store is further away. It is not all in their head, it is in their optical flow.
Okay, so we've established that I am not a camera. I am a single biological organism with a strict energy budget. But the thing is, I am rarely alone.
And this is the final and maybe the most crucial piece of the system design. We are obligate social animals.
Obligate, meaning we have no choice in the matter.
Meaning a lone human on the ancient savanna is a dead human. We can't run very fast. We have no claws, we have no fur, we survive only by cooperating, by sharing the load.
So this leads to the concept of a social baseline.
This is the theory developed by a researcher named Jim Cohn. He argues that the human brain's default setting its baseline operational mode assumes the presence of other people. It assumes we have a tribe.
And when we don't, when we're alone.
When we are isolated, the brain treats it as a crisis. It's a load state. It goes on high alert. It burns more glucose, just managing the background threat of being alone.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the hill. Do friends change the way we see the hill?
They absolutely do. A researcher named Simone Schnall did this exact study. She had people stand at the bottom of the hill. Some of them were alone. Some were standing next to a friend.
And the friend didn't have to offer to help carry their backpack or anything?
No, just standing there. Their mere presence was enough. The people who were with a friend perceived the hill as significantly less steep. And, what's even more interesting, the longer they had known the friend, the deeper and more trusted the bond, the flatter the hill looked.
Wow. So friendship is literally a lever that flattens the perceived difficulty of the world.
Think about it from the system's incentive architecture. If I'm alone, I have to climb that hill using only my own calories. If I fall and break my leg, I die. The potential cost is extremely high. But if I am standing next to you and you are my friend, I know I can borrow your calories. You can help me if I stumble. You can watch for snakes while I watch for lions. The bioenergetic cost of the action plummets, so the perception adjusts accordingly.
It's an economy of action that includes other people's resources.
Exactly. My sense of self expands to include you. We become a single distributed processing unit.
There was also that hand-holding study with the MRI scanner. That one really got to me on an emotional level.
The threat response study, it's a powerful one. They put women in an fMRI machine and they tell them, when you see a red X on the screen, there is a 20% chance you will get a mild but unpleasant electric shock on your ankle.
So the brain's threat centers start freaking out. Anticipatory anxiety.
The hypothalamus, the amygdala, they light up like a Christmas tree. The brain goes into prepare for impact mode, but then they have someone hold the woman's hand while she's in the scanner.
What happens if it's a stranger holding her hand?
The threat response drops a little. Just having another human present helps. It's better than being alone. But if it's her husband holding her hand, and they've been rated as having a high-quality, supportive marriage, the threat response plummets. The brain effectively says, oh, he's here. I don't need to devote as many resources to worrying about this.
It offloads the stress onto the social connection.
It creates a load-sharing effect. The body stays calmer because it trusts the social network to help handle the crisis. The burden is distributed.
Which implies that chronic loneliness, true social isolation, is a metabolic disaster.
It is. It's physiologically expensive. If you are lonely, you are walking through life wearing a heavy, invisible backpack. The world literally looks more threatening. The hills look steeper. You are burning through your precious energy reserves just trying to maintain a baseline level of vigilance.
It completely reframes the modern mental health crisis as a social metabolic crisis.
Correct. You cannot effectively treat the software of the mind if the hardware of the body is stuck in a state of isolated, high-alert threat.
So we have all this evidence. We have the hill studies, the sugar, the backpacks, the friends, the hand-holding. It seems completely undeniable that we are embodied perceivers. So my question is, why does the camera model persist? Why are we still designing our schools, our workplaces, our entire world as if we were just brains on sticks?
And now we have to do the persistence analysis. The institutional inertia that keeps this old model in place is absolutely massive.
It always comes back to the silos, doesn't it?
It almost always does.
Yeah.
Universities are built on specialization. If you want to get tenure and funding to study perception, you go to the psychology department. You study optics and retinal processing. You sit people in chairs and clamp their heads still. If you want to study glucose metabolism, you go to the kinesiology or biology department. You put people on treadmills and take blood samples.
And ne'er the twain shall meet.
Proffitt's work is rare because it's messy. To do the Hill study properly, you need a psychologist who also knows how to calibrate a weighted backpack, measure blood lactate levels, and analyze social attachment variables. That kind of project doesn't fit neatly into a single department's grant application.
It's cross-disciplinary, which can be a dirty word when you're up for tenure.
And then there's the powerful force of technological validation. We are currently obsessed with artificial intelligence. We are building these enormous large language models and neural networks, and what are they fundamentally?
They are pure software.
They are disembodied brains. They're quite literally brains in a vat of silicon. And because they can play chess and write poetry and pass the bar exam, we look at them and say, see? We were right all along. Intelligence is just data processing. You don't actually need a body.
But an AI doesn't know what a hill means.
Exactly. An AI can identify a hill in a photograph with 99% accuracy. It can calculate the angle down to 1/100 of a degree, but it doesn't know what it feels like to climb it. It doesn't know the ache in your lungs or the burn in your thighs. It lacks, as the saying goes, skin in the game.
Literally.
Without a body, without the constant non-negotiable risk of death, without the crushing cost of energy perception, has no ground, has no meaning. It's just abstract math. But we are letting the AI model dictate how we view ourselves. We are trying to become more like the disembodied machines we built.
Which brings us directly to the crisis, the fragmentation of it all.
The interconnection. Or the lack thereof. We have institutionally broken the fundamental loop. Culture shapes the body shapes perception, and perception shapes our reality.
Let's talk about how this affects how we see other people, because this isn't just about inanimate hills, it's about society.
There's a well-documented phenomenon called perceptual narrowing. When you are a baby, say 3 months old, you are a universal perceiver. You can reliably distinguish between the faces of lemurs. You can distinguish between the individual faces of every single human ethnicity. Your brain is wide open.
But that ability goes away.
By the time you're 9 months old, it's gone. You become a world-class expert in distinguishing the faces you see every day, your in-group, and you lose the ability to easily distinguish the faces of the out-group. This is the well-known other race effect.
Is that racism? Or is it just the brain being efficient?
It's efficiency that, if unchecked, becomes the seed of racism. It's the affordance logic being applied to other people. If I don't interact with a certain group of people, if they are not part of my social network, my survival loop, My brain stops wasting precious energy mapping their individual facial features in high resolution. They cease to be individuals and become a category. They become them.
And then you layer on top of that the more visceral reactions, like smell.
Proffitt brings up the fascinating history of the term buttersinkers.
Butakusai, the Japanese term.
Right. When Westerners first arrived in Japan in the 19th century, the Japanese, whose diet was very low in animal fat and dairy, were often physically repulsed by the body odor of the Europeans. They smelled like rancid butter.
And the Europeans, I'm sure, thought the Japanese diet of fermented foods and fish smelled strange to them.
Of course. And this is biological. It's driven by our MHC, the major histocompatibility complex. Our immune systems directly shape our unique body odor. We are evolved to detect genetic distance through smell.
Which is good for mating. You don't want to mate with someone whose immune system is too similar to yours.
Precisely. But it can be terrible for politics. When we are stressed or scared, or in a low resource state, that difference in smell can trigger a powerful disgust response. It can trigger xenophobia. We don't just disagree with the other. On a deep physiological level, we are physically revolted by them.
So political polarization isn't just a disagreement about ideas. It's a divergence of unwelcome.
That is the ultimate structural implication of this work. If I am economically insecure, physically unhealthy, and socially isolated, my world is steep, threatening, and hard. The distances are long. If you are wealthy, healthy, and deeply connected, your world is flat, welcoming, and full of opportunity. We aren't just arguing from different sets of facts, we are voting based on two completely different physical realities.
I can't talk you out of your reality because you are literally seeing a different world than I am.
Exactly. I can't argue the hill flat for you. The only way to change your view is to help you carry the backpack.
Man, that's a heavy thought. And looking at our present-day situation, it feels like we are actively making this fragmentation worse.
We are engaging in a massive, uncontrolled experiment on the human organism called the sedentary shift.
We've just stopped moving.
We have systematically engineered physical effort out of our daily lives. We have escalators, we have cars, we have Uber Eats bringing food to our door. We sit in a chair for 10 hours a day, staring at a screen.
And this creates that vicious obesity feedback loop.
That's right. As we move less, we gain weight. As our bodies become heavier, the bioenergetic cost of any movement goes up. So perceptually, the hills look steeper, the flight of stairs looks harder, the gym looks farther away, and so we move even less. The perception reinforces the trap.
And then, after sitting all day, we log on to Zoom for our social interaction.
Digital disembodiment. This is the root of Zoom fatigue. Think about the system design we've just spent the last hour discussing.
Okay, walk me through it.
On a Zoom call, I see your face, full screen, maybe 18 inches from mine. In the evolutionary environment, if another human's face is that close to yours, you are in one of two situations. You are either about to kiss them, or you are about to fight them. It is a high arousal, intimate state.
But I'm physically alone in my office.
Precisely. My eyes are screaming, intimacy, threat, pay attention. But my body, my proprioceptive sense, is saying, empty room, stationary. My mirror neurons are firing like crazy trying to mimic your expressions, but I'm not getting any of the subtle chemical pheromones or the microsecond timing cues that come with true co-presence.
It's a complete sensory mismatch.
It's metabolic chaos. The brain is spinning its wheels, burning huge amounts of glucose, trying to resolve this profound conflict between the visual and the somatic. That's why you're more exhausted after a 30-minute video call than you are after a 30-minute coffee meeting in person. You are paying a very high metabolic tax for a very low social return.
In our institutions.
Yeah.
Our workplaces, our schools.
Yeah.
They just don't get it. They don't account for the body.
They don't know how. We see this in the judicial system with the horrifying hungry judge effect.
This study is truly terrifying.
Researchers in Israel analyzed over 1,000 parole rulings. They found that if your parole hearing is scheduled for 9 in the morning, right after the judge has had breakfast and coffee, you have about a 65% chance of getting parole.
Okay. Better than a coin flip.
But if your hearing is scheduled for 11:45 a.m. right before the lunch break, your chance of parole drops to near zero.
Zero. Not just lower, but zero.
Virtually zero. The judge is hypoglycemic. Their blood sugar is low. Making a complex, effortful decision like granting parole, which requires changing the status quo, is metabolically expensive. Denying parole, just keeping things as they are, is the default low-energy choice. So the tired, depleted brain takes the cheap route.
Justice is not blind. Justice is hungry.
Justice is bioenergetic. And if we don't account for that, if we don't mandate snack breaks for judges, if we don't design schools that allow for movement, if we don't start treating loneliness as a public health crisis, we are fundamentally failing the organism.
We're failing ourselves by pretending we're something we're not.
We are trying to be cameras, and we are breaking the lens in the process.
So, let's try to bring this all together. We've covered the biology, the physics, the philosophy, the sociology of perception. What is the single biggest takeaway for someone listening to this?
The takeaway is that you are not a passive observer of a pre-made reality. You are an active creator. Your body, your tired, hungry, energetic, lonely, happy, socially connected body is constantly painting the world into existence around you.
The hill is not just the hill.
The hill is a relationship. It's a relationship between the geometry of the ground and the current state of you.
So here is a final provocative thought to leave you with. If your perception of the world is determined by your fatigue, your fitness, and your friends, if the very shape of reality changes based on who is standing next to you, then who exactly are you when you are alone, tired, and still?
That is the question.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.